Shocking moment, Royal Guard horse DRAGS woman off feet. Horse guards, Royal Guard, King's Guard. The wide open space echoed softly with footsteps, camera clicks, and low conversations spoken in many different accents. People had traveled from all over the world just to stand here, to witness a tradition that had lasted for centuries. The tall stone buildings, the historic gates, and the sense of order gave the place a powerful presence, as if history itself was standing still. At the center of it all stood the King's Guard, mounted high on a large, well-trained horse. The guard wore a perfectly pressed uniform, polished boots, and a helmet that reflected the daylight. His posture was straight and unmoving, his face calm and focused. He had been trained to remain still no matter what happened around him. This was not a performance, it was duty. The horse beneath him was strong and impressive, its muscles visible as it stood firmly on the ground. Its coat shined softly in the light, and its breathing was slow and steady. Though calm, the animal was alert, aware of every sound, movement, and change in the environment. This horse was not a statue. It was a living, working animal, trained for discipline but still guided by natural instincts. Around them, tourists gathered in small groups. Some whispered in excitement, others smiled as they raised their phones. Parents lifted children so they could see better. A few people laughed quietly, amazed by how still the guard remained, even as people stood just a few steps away. For many visitors, this was the highlight of their trip. They wanted the perfect photo, the perfect memory. Among the crowd was a woman who had been waiting patiently for her turn to get closer. She had watched others step forward, take quick pictures, and move away. Each time nothing happened. The guard did not move, the horse did not react. Everything seemed safe, normal. Predictable, that gave her confidence. She adjusted her bag, checked her phone camera, and took a few steps forward. Her focus was on the image she wanted to capture. She wanted a clear shot, something close enough to feel real and special. Like many others, she saw the guard and horse as part of the scenery, not as active participants in a working environment. Nearby, small signs were placed along the area. They were simple and clear, reminding visitors to keep a safe distance. Most people glanced at them briefly or ignored them altogether. The signs blended into the background, easily missed by someone focused on taking photos. The woman had seen them earlier, but at that moment they didn't feel important. Nothing bad had happened to anyone else, so she assumed nothing would happen to her. The crowd continued to shift and move. People came and went, filling the space with quiet energy. Some stood back respectfully, observing from a distance. Others edged closer, curious to test how near they could get. The woman noticed how close a few people had been moments earlier and felt reassured. She told herself she would be quick. The horse remained still, but its ears moved slightly, turning toward the sounds around it. This was subtle, something only a trained eye might notice. The guard stayed perfectly composed, eyes forward, hands steady. From the outside, it all looked frozen in time. The woman lifted her phone and adjusted the angle. She took one step closer, just enough to make the guard and horse fill the frame. She smiled to herself, pleased with the view. To her, it felt harmless. She wasn't touching anything. She wasn't shouting. She believed she was being careful. Behind her, a few people watched with mild curiosity. Some thought she was getting too close, but no one said anything. It was easy to assume that if it were truly dangerous, someone would stop her. The silence of authority made the situation feel safe. The horse shifted its weight slightly, a natural movement that happens without thought. Its tail swayed gently. The sound of metal from the uniform moved softly in the air. These small details went unnoticed by the woman, whose attention remained fixed on her screen. The setting, though peaceful, was not meant for casual behavior. Horse Guards was a place of tradition, discipline, and responsibility. The guards and their horses were trained for long hours, exposed to crowds, noise, and constant attention. But training did not remove reality. These were not props or decorations. They were working members of a living system that required respect and space. The woman leaned slightly forward to steady her shot. The moment felt ordinary to her, almost boring in its calmness. She had no idea that this normal day, this simple decision to step closer, would soon turn into something unforgettable. At that second, nothing seemed wrong. The crowd murmured. The horse stood tall. The guard remained still. Time moved forward quietly, unaware that it was about to change. What began as a routine afternoon, filled with curiosity and admiration, was standing at the edge of a moment that would remind everyone watching that history, tradition, and safety demand attention. And sometimes, all it takes is one small step too close for a calm scene to become something no one expected. As the woman stood closer than before, she felt a quiet sense of confidence. Nothing had happened yet, and that silence made her believe everything was fine. Around her, the crowd continued to move naturally, people stepping forward and stepping back without any trouble. The calm atmosphere gave the impression that the rules were flexible, more like suggestions than serious instructions. The warning signs were still there, standing quietly at the edges of the space. They were clear but easy to ignore. Most visitors glanced at them only once, if at all. The woman had noticed them earlier in the day, but now they barely crossed her mind. In her thoughts, the guard and horse had already proven they would not react. She believed she understood the situation better than the signs did. The guard remained completely still. His training required him to stay focused and composed, no matter how close people came. He was not allowed to speak, gesture, or warn visitors unless there was an immediate risk. His role was to maintain presence and control, not to guide tourists. This silence, though professional, often gave people the wrong idea. Many mistook it for approval. The horse stood tall beneath him, steady but alert. While it had been trained to remain calm in busy environments, it was still sensitive to space and movement. Horses are aware animals. They feel changes around them long before humans notice anything unusual. Small shifts, quick movements, or unfamiliar closeness can affect them deeply, even if they do not show it right away. The woman adjusted her position again, moving slightly to the side. She wanted a better angle, one where the sunlight hit the uniform just right. Her phone camera captured the polished details, the shining helmet, and the strong shape of the horse. She was pleased with how the image looked and felt proud of herself for getting so close without any trouble. Behind her, a few people exchanged glances. Some felt uneasy, sensing she had crossed an invisible line. Others simply watched, curious to see what would happen next. Still, no one spoke up. In a place filled with authority and tradition, people often expect someone else to take responsibility. The noise around them increased slightly as more tourists arrived. Footsteps echoed against the stone ground. A distant sound of traffic mixed with voices and camera clicks. All of it blended into a constant background hum. For the horse, these sounds were familiar, but the growing closeness of strangers was not something it could ignore forever. The woman shifted her weight, unaware that her movements were being noticed by the animal. To her, each step felt small and harmless. She did not see the situation from the horse's perspective. She did not understand that standing too close could feel uncomfortable, even threatening, to a large animal trained to protect its space. The guard's posture remained unchanged, but inside he was aware of the environment. He could feel the horse's breathing beneath him. He noticed the subtle tension in its body, the slight change in balance. These signs were not dramatic, but they mattered. He was trained to sense them, though his options were limited unless a clear problem appeared. The woman raised her phone again, leaning forward just a little more. She wanted one final picture, something even closer than before. Her focus narrowed, shutting out everything else. In that moment, she was no longer thinking about safety or rules. She was thinking about the image, the memory she would take home. The horse's ears flicked backward briefly, then forward again. It shifted one hoof, adjusting its stance. These were quiet signals, easily missed by anyone unfamiliar with horses. To most people, the animal still looked calm and unmoving. To the horse, however, its space was shrinking. The crowd continued to behave as if nothing was wrong. Some people laughed softly. Others whispered comments about the guard's discipline. A child pointed excitedly, pulling at a parent's sleeve. Life went on, unaware of how close it was to a sudden change. The woman felt relaxed. She had done this kind of thing before in other places with other attractions. She trusted her instincts and believed she knew when something felt unsafe. Right now, everything felt normal. Too normal to worry. What she did not realize was that danger does not always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it arrives quietly, hiding behind routine and comfort. The calm before a moment can be misleading, especially when people confuse stillness with safety. The horse took another small step, barely noticeable. Its breathing changed, becoming slightly faster. The guard felt it beneath him but stayed composed. Training told him to remain steady unless the horse truly reacted. The rules were strict, and breaking formation without cause was not an option. The woman lowered her phone for a second, checking the photo she had just taken. She smiled, satisfied, then decided to take one more. She stepped forward again just a few inches. That single movement closed the space even more. At that point, the situation was no longer balanced. The distance that kept everything safe was gone. The woman was too close, and the horse was aware of it. The animal did not understand her intentions. It only felt pressure, closeness, and unfamiliar movement in a place where it expected respect and space. The crowd still did not react. From the outside, it looked like another tourist moment, no different from the many before it. But underneath the surface, tension had begun to build. The afternoon light continued to shine, unchanged and unaware. The stone walls stood silent. The guard remained motionless. The woman stood confident, but the balance had shifted. What seemed like a harmless decision, made in a few seconds, was now setting the stage for something no one expected. The warnings had been ignored, the distance had been crossed, and the quiet signs had gone unnoticed. The moment was no longer ordinary. Everything was about to change, and it would happen faster than anyone could prepare for. The moment began without warning. There was no loud sound, no clear signal that something was about to happen. 1 second, everything looked the same as before. The next second, the calm air felt different, as if it had tightened around everyone standing nearby. The horse reacted suddenly, not out of anger, but out of instinct. It felt its space had been crossed and responded in the only way it knew how. The movement was quick and powerful, far faster than the woman could understand or prepare for. What felt like a simple step forward, just moments earlier, now turned into confusion. The woman felt a sharp pull that surprised her completely. Her balance shifted, and before she could adjust, her feet lost their steady position on the ground. Her phone slipped slightly in her hand as she tried to understand what was happening. Her thoughts scattered, and her confidence disappeared in an instant. The crowd reacted almost at the same time. Quiet voices turned into gasps. People stepped back quickly, eyes wide, hands rising to their mouths. What had been a peaceful scene only seconds before now held everyone's full attention. Cameras that were raised for photos froze in place. The woman tried to steady herself, but everything was happening too fast. The strength involved was far more than she had expected. She had never imagined that something like this could happen in such a public, controlled space. Fear replaced her excitement, and her heart began to race. The horse moved with force, responding to the closeness it felt. Its actions were not planned or directed toward harm. It was reacting to a situation it could not understand in human terms. To the animal, it was simply responding to pressure and movement near its body. The guard felt the sudden shift immediately. He was trained for moments like this, trained to stay calm even when things changed quickly. His body adjusted with the horse's movement, keeping balance and control. Though his face remained serious and composed, his focus sharpened instantly. The woman stumbled, her body moving in a way she could not control. Her feet struggled to find solid ground again. The moment felt much longer than it truly was. Time seemed to stretch, making every second feel heavy and slow. People nearby shouted in surprise. Some called out in concern. Others moved away quickly, giving space without even thinking. The open area that had been filled with curious visitors just moments ago suddenly cleared, as if everyone understood at the same time that this was serious. The woman's bag shifted against her side, and she let go of her phone to focus on staying upright. Her thoughts raced. She was no longer thinking about photos or memories. She was only thinking about staying safe and getting away from what felt like a powerful, unstoppable force. The horse continued its movement for a brief moment, then slowed as the guard guided it back under control. The guard's training showed clearly now. His hands were firm but calm. His posture remained strong. He worked with the horse, not against it, bringing the situation back toward balance. The woman finally managed to regain her footing. Her knees felt weak and her breathing was fast and uneven. She stood frozen for a second, shocked by what had just happened. Her face showed fear, confusion, and disbelief all at once. The crowd remained silent for a moment, unsure how to react. The sudden change had left everyone stunned. No one expected something like this from a place that felt so orderly and controlled. The idea that a moment could shift so quickly was hard to accept. The horse stood again, its body still tense but no longer moving forward. Its breathing was heavy, its muscles tight beneath the uniform it carried. The animal had done what came naturally and now waited, alert and aware of its surroundings. The guard stayed seated, steady, and focused. His job was to maintain control, and he did exactly that. Without speaking, without dramatic movement, he restored calm to the situation. His presence reminded everyone that this was a working environment, not a performance. The woman slowly stepped back, creating distance between herself and the horse. Her legs trembled slightly, and she held her arms close to her body. She felt embarrassed, frightened, and shaken all at once. The excitement she had felt earlier was completely gone. A few people nearby moved closer, checking to see if she was okay. Their faces showed concern, but also relief that things had not become worse. Someone picked up the phone she had dropped and handed it back to her carefully. The sound of voices returned slowly, softer than before. People spoke in low tones, replaying what they had just seen. Some shook their heads. Others pointed quietly, trying to understand how it had happened so quickly. The woman nodded to those around her, showing that she was able to stand and move on her own. She took a few slow steps away, putting more space between herself and the horse. Each step helped her feel a little more stable, a little more real. Her heart continued to beat fast, and her hands felt unsteady. She looked back only once, seeing the guard and horse standing in their original position, as if nothing had happened. That image felt strange and unreal, considering what she had just experienced. The crowd slowly began to settle, though the mood had changed. The playful curiosity was gone. In its place was quiet respect and caution. People stood farther back now, paying attention to the signs they had ignored before. The woman moved toward the side of the open area and stopped to catch her breath. She leaned slightly forward, hands resting on her knees for a moment. Her mind replayed the scene again and again, trying to understand how a normal decision had turned into something so frightening. She realized then how easily she had underestimated the situation. The guard and horse were not objects meant for entertainment. They were trained professionals, living beings with boundaries that needed to be respected. As the shock slowly faded, gratitude took its place. She was thankful that she could walk away, thankful that the guard had regained control so quickly, thankful that the moment had ended without more serious consequences. The open space returned to its quiet rhythm, but it would never feel the same to those who had witnessed the moment. They had seen how fast things could change, how important distance and awareness truly were. For the woman, that afternoon would stay in her memory far longer than any photo ever could. What began as a simple attempt to capture a moment had turned into a powerful lesson she would never forget. And as the crowd continued to move on, one truth remained clear in the air. Calm places still demand respect, and even familiar sights can remind people of that truth in unexpected ways. After the sudden moment passed, everything slowed down, but the tension did not disappear. Right away, the space around horse guards felt different now, heavier and quieter. People stood still for a few seconds, as if they were waiting to be told what to do next. The woman remained near the side, trying to calm herself, while the guard stayed mounted, focused, and steady. The guard's training became clear in the minutes that followed. Without panic or rushed movements, he gently guided the horse back into a stable position. His hands were calm, his posture firm, and his attention fully on the animal beneath him. The horse responded slowly, its breathing beginning to steady as it sensed the guard's control. The powerful energy it had shown moments earlier started to fade. Nearby, another guard and staff members approached carefully. They did not run or shout. Everything was handled with quiet control. Their presence alone helped settle the crowd. People stepped back further, creating more space without being asked. The lesson had already been learned. The woman was checked by those nearby to make sure she was all right. Someone asked her softly if she felt dizzy or needed to sit down. She nodded, taking slow breaths, trying to let her racing heart calm down. Her legs still felt weak, but she was able to stand on her own. She took a moment to look around. Faces stared back at her with mixed expressions, concern, curiosity, and relief. No one blamed her openly, but she could feel the weight of attention. It made her uncomfortable, but she understood why. What had happened was not something people saw every day. A staff member spoke to her gently, reminding her that the horses were working animals and that the signs were there for safety. The tone was respectful, not harsh. The goal was not to shame her, but to explain. She listened closely, nodding as she absorbed every word. The message felt clear now in a way it hadn't before. The woman apologized quietly. Her voice was soft and her eyes stayed low. She did not try to argue or explain herself. She knew she had made a mistake. The excitement of the moment had pushed her to ignore the rules, and now she fully understood why those rules existed. The guard remained silent throughout, as required by his role. Still, his actions spoke clearly. His calm response had prevented the situation from becoming worse. The horse stood tall again, alert but controlled, showing the trust between rider and animal. It was a reminder of how much discipline and effort went into maintaining order in such a busy place. The crowd slowly began to move again, though the energy was different now. People were quieter, more thoughtful. Phones were lowered. Some visitors pointed at the warning signs and spoke to each other in hushed voices. Parents pulled children a little closer. Everyone seemed more aware of their surroundings. The woman stepped farther away from the center, choosing a spot where she could sit for a moment. She rested on a nearby ledge, her hands still shaking slightly. She replayed the event in her mind again and again. Each time she realized how quickly things had changed and how little control she had in that moment. She thought about how confident she had felt earlier, how harmless her actions had seemed. That confidence now felt misplaced. She understood that experience did not always teach lessons gently. Sometimes it took fear and shock to make something truly clear. Around her, people continued their visits, but many kept a greater distance from the guards and horses. The open space felt wider now, as if everyone had silently agreed to respect the boundaries that had been ignored before. The guards continued their duties, steady and professional, as they always had. The horse, now calmer, stood quietly. Its ears moved gently, listening to the sounds around it. The animal had not meant to frighten anyone. It had simply responded to what it felt. Watching it now, the woman saw it differently. She no longer saw a tourist attraction. She saw a living being with instincts and limits. As time passed, her breathing returned to normal. The tight feeling in her chest slowly eased. She stood up carefully, testing her balance before fully straightening. She felt tired, both physically and emotionally, as if the moment had drained her energy. Before leaving the area, she looked once more at the guard and horse from a safe distance. This time, she felt respect instead of excitement. She understood the discipline, the responsibility, and the quiet strength required to stand there for hours, surrounded by crowds. The incident had not stopped the day, but it had changed its tone. For many who witnessed it, the experience stayed with them. Conversations continued long after, people reminding each other to be careful, to pay attention, to respect the rules. The woman eventually walked away, blending back into the flow of visitors. She did not take any more photos. The memory she carried with her was far stronger than any image on her phone. For the guards, it was another reminder of why training mattered so much. Their role required constant awareness, even when nothing seemed wrong. They knew that calm moments could shift quickly, and they remained ready without showing it. As the afternoon moved on, horse guards returned to its steady rhythm. The stone building stood tall, the open space filled again with quiet footsteps and distant sounds. From the outside, it looked peaceful once more. But beneath that calm surface was a shared understanding among those who had been there. Safety was not automatic. Respect was not optional. And even in the most familiar places, awareness could make all the difference. The woman carried that understanding with her as she left, knowing that the moment had changed her perspective forever. It was not a story she had planned to experience, but it was one she would never forget. As the day slowly came to an end, the area around horse guards returned to its usual flow. Tourists continued to arrive, unaware of what had happened earlier, while those who had witnessed the moment carried it quietly with them. The stone paths echoed with footsteps again, and the air filled with soft voices and distant city sounds. From the outside, everything looked normal, but for many people, the meaning of the place had changed. The woman walked farther away from the crowd, choosing a quieter route. With every step, her thoughts became clearer. The fear she had felt earlier slowly turned into understanding. She realized that the moment was not just about what had happened to her, but about what she had learned from it. The memory stayed sharp in her mind, not as something embarrassing, but as something important. She thought about how easy it was to forget that some places were not meant for casual behavior. When something becomes popular with visitors, it can start to feel like a show. People take photos, smile, and move on, often forgetting that behind the tradition are real people and real animals doing serious work. That realization stayed with her. Later that evening, she spoke about the experience with someone she trusted. As she explained what happened, she noticed how carefully she chose her words. She did not blame anyone else. She spoke honestly about her own choices and how quickly things had changed. Talking about it helped her understand it even more. Meanwhile, those who had witnessed the event shared their thoughts as well. Some discussed it quietly among themselves, while others mentioned it online, reminding people to respect safety rules. The discussion was not about fear, but awareness. Many agreed that the moment served as a strong reminder of personal responsibility in public spaces. The guards continued their duties day after day, just as they always had. For them, moments like this reinforced the importance of training and discipline. They understood that their calm presence played a big role in keeping situations under control. Though they rarely spoke about such incidents, their actions showed professionalism and care. The horses, too, continued their routines. They were groomed, trained, and cared for by experienced handlers who understood their needs. These animals were respected not just for their strength, but for their role in tradition and service. Their well-being mattered, and so did the space they required to feel comfortable. Over time, the memory of the incident became less intense for the woman, but the lesson stayed strong. Whenever she found herself in busy or historic places again, she became more observant. She paid attention to signs. She watched how others behaved. She chose caution over curiosity. She realized that rules were not there to limit enjoyment, but to protect everyone involved. That understanding brought a sense of maturity and awareness she hadn't felt before. It was a quiet change, but a meaningful one. For many visitors, Horse Guards remained a place of beauty and history. But for those who had seen the moment unfold, it now also represented something deeper. It stood as a reminder that respect is an important part of experiencing any tradition. Without it, even the calmest places can change quickly. The woman never forgot how close she had been to something far more serious. That thought stayed with her, not as fear, but as gratitude. She was thankful that the situation had been brought under control so quickly and that she had walked away able to reflect and learn. As time passed, the story faded from attention, replaced by new moments and new visitors. But its impact remained in small ways. People stood a little farther back. Parents spoke more clearly to children. Visitors read signs more carefully. These small changes mattered. The open space continued to welcome people from all over the world. Cameras still clicked. Smiles were still shared. But there was a subtle shift in behavior, a quiet respect that had grown stronger. For the woman, the experience became part of her personal story. Not one she shared often, but one that shaped how she moved through the world. It reminded her that awareness could prevent harm, and that understanding often comes from moments we do not expect. She learned that being present meant more than just being there physically. It meant paying attention, respecting boundaries, and understanding the environment. These lessons extended beyond that single place and followed her into daily life. The guards remained symbols of tradition and responsibility, standing steady as they always had. Their presence reminded everyone that some roles require silence, patience, and control. Their work continued quietly without seeking attention. As the sun set and shadows stretched across the stone ground, Horse Guards stood unchanged, holding its place in history. The day had passed, but its message lingered gently in the air. Sometimes the strongest lessons do not come from planned experiences. They come from brief moments that catch people off guard and leave them thinking long after. This was one of those moments. In the end, what stayed with everyone was not shock, but understanding. A reminder that respect creates safety, that awareness protects both people and animals, and that even familiar places deserve careful attention. The woman moved forward with that understanding, knowing she would never see such places the same way again. And in that quiet realization, the true meaning of the day revealed itself, not as a frightening memory, but as a lasting lesson in respect and responsibility.